Sit. That's a very good sit. All right, this is an extra special bonus that normally I do not share on video, but I'm doing it because this is a Mae-Day Rescue. We pull all the bells and whistles out for Mae-Day. So we're going to talk about how we can disagree with our dog in this video. Now, I like to use a hissing sound like a cat to disagree with the dog. I translate that as to no, don't do that, or don't even think about doing that. Now, if you watch the dog whisperer, he uses a CH sound. I find the S sound alone is better because it mimics some animals. The reason the hissing sound works is because so many animals make it as a warning. Cats, skunks, raccoons, perfect. Snakes, even bunny rabbits. So I translate it sit as to no, don't do that, or don't even think about doing it. And the most effective way to use it is to disagree with the dog before it starts to do the wrong thing. So if you've had a dog for a while, you should recognize, oh, he's about to go chew on something, he's about to go pee, he's about to mark. Hiss before. Now I have 10 levels of my hiss. I have level 1 hiss, which is just a low one, and a level 10 where I have to cover my mouth because I'm spraying. I want to match the dog's energy. If I don't meet or exceed the dog's energy level, we're going to actually use it right now. Sit. If we don't exceed the dog's energy, or match or exceed, the dog will not either hear it or won't respect it. So I hiss 1 time per incident. If I hiss, it becomes learned. Dogs have something known as learned irrelevance. No is the 51st most commonly used word in the English language, so many dogs start filtering it out because studies that I've read show it's only used for the dog 16 to 24% of the time. The other 76% of the time it's the TV, we're talking to each other, or on the phone. So the dog just filters it out. Hissing sound, there's no question who we're talking to. So hiss 1 time per incident. The second thing I do is I stand up abruptly. I would normally demonstrate it, but we have Carrol over here who's finally sleeping and she will freak out and bark and it'll be hard for you to hear. So I stand up abruptly. When dogs communicate with each other through movement, they do it in a sudden movement, a big movement. So if I stand up slowly, I just look like I'm meandering about. So I call it jack in the boxing up. You bounce up really quick. Whatever direction your hips and shoulders are pointing is where your authority goes. So if I stand up and the dog is right here and the dog walks over there and I keep on facing forward, it literally walked away from my authority. So as the dog walks away, I pivot and I keep it in front of me until it's stationary. It can sit, it can stand in place, it can lay down, or it can leave the room completely. But if it's still walking away and I sit down, that's akin to me not following through, and it will communicate to the dog, he wasn't talking to me, he probably just got stung in the butt, that's why he bounced up so fast. Just coincidental. So if I do it consistently and I start tracking, he's like, yep, he's talking to me. And then as soon as the dog stops, I sit back down or I stop pivoting, he's like, yeah, he was definitely talking to me. So that's the second consequence, is I stand up abruptly and turn to face the dog and wait for them to be stationary. The third consequence is I stand up and I march. Giving and taking territory is a big part of how dogs communicate with each other. So if I stand up and I march at the dog, now right now this dog is facing me. Can we see him in the shot? Mm-hmm. So if I stand up and march him, he backs up, but he's still facing me. He's still pointing, orientating at me, so he's I'm still challenging for whatever it was, to be on the couch or the treats in your pocket or whatever. When a dog wants to communicate that it understands, what it will do, it will turn sideways or greater away from you. So if you're marching at the dog, and I say march because I want you to have intent. The goal is to almost give the dog a flinching experience. And it's not stomping your feet. Don't slow down when you get to the dog. Now, we don't want to hurt our dogs, but if we slow down and then stop before we get to the dog's like, I don't have to move, they just stop themselves. Your dog needs to get in a habit of deferring and getting out of your way. So when you move briskly towards them, not stomping, but briskly towards them, and they think, if I'm still here when the human gets here, the human is going to run me over, I better get out of the way. And then eventually they turn sideways. As soon as they turn sideways, we stop. Now, don't leave your feet askew like this. Kind of hard to see, but you want to keep them right next to each other. You don't want to have one in front with your hips, and then you're going to keep your hips and shoulders pointed at the dog until it turns sideways. Well, you're going to march at it until it turns sideways. As soon as it turns sideways, we stop. We wait for the dog to be stationary. Now, it turns sideways and walks away. I would stop in place and just pivot it and wait for the dog to be stationary. Once it's stationary, just like second consequence, then I can stop. Now, let's say I don't want the dog to come in this immediate area, and I get up and march at the dog, and maybe there's a rug, and the dog's not allowed to be on the rug. Well, I march at the dog, but it turns sideways, but it's still on the rug. Well, it's still not where I want it to be, so I would continue marching into it, and as soon as it got outside the rug, then I stop in place. This is how we communicate where boundaries are. So just turning sideways doesn't help if the dog is still in a no man's zone, or no woman's zone. And then the fourth consequence is the first thing I talked about off camera when we got here. When a dog is freaking out, some people like to do what's known as an alpha roll. They will pin the dog down on its back and hold it down until it relaxes. While that has a short-term benefit, it creates a lot of psychological problems for the dog. So what I prefer to do is put the dog on a leash. I step on the leash, giving it just enough room to stand or sit. They don't have to duck their head. They can do it calmly, but they don't have enough room to walk around or do anything else. What I'm saying is if you won't listen to me, the consequence is you lose all freedom. I'm not going to freak out. I'm not going to yell at you. I'm just going to restrict your movement. Now, what a lot of dogs will do is sometimes they'll throw a temper tantrum. If they do, don't say any word. It's a good way to burn energy. When the dog finally sits down, it'll sit, but it'll sit as far away as the leash will allow. So it'll be a tense leash. Dogs have something called an opposition reflex. If you pull on the leash, they will automatically pull against it. So if they put tension on the leash, we leave the tension. As soon as we release the tension, they're going to run away. So as soon as the dog sits, if the dog sits here and this is the foot that's on the leash, I would slide it towards the dog to take the tension off the leash. This would actually be this leg. But as soon as I take it lies down, I take the tension off. That helps settle it down a little bit. Now, usually a minute later, sometimes it's several minutes later, the dog will lay down. Just like I mentioned in the other video, sitting and lying down are more subordinate positions. So as soon as it lays down, it can lay down like this and still be full of energy. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for the energy to return to like a level 1. So as soon as it lays down, it relaxes. Then if this is the leash and I'm stepping on it like this, I very subtly take my foot off the leash. I don't even want the dog to notice that I do it. And because we took the tension off, it doesn't feel any different. The dog might sit there for 5, 10 minutes, an hour, whatever it is. When it gets up, it'll walk away very casually dragging the leash. Now, you never want a dog to drag the leash around unsupervised because it can get caught on something and injure itself or hang itself. But if it revs back up and does the wrong thing again, as it runs by, you can step on the leash and reapply the consequence. And you keep on doing that until the dog's energy settles down. Once the dog is calm, we take our foot off the leash and they walk away and they're calm for a minute or two. Then we take the leash off. It's not quid pro quo, and we are rewarding a more calm and balanced frame of mind. So using these escalating consequences in order I like using them because number one, I derived them except for the hiss and the leash. The second two are how dogs communicate with each other. So it's first person, they understand it's their native language. The hissing sound is what other animals do, so they do recognize that the leash is a little bit different, but by using the leash, I'm not applying the consequence, the leash is applying the consequence. So it doesn't have negative baggage with me. Now, sometimes I will combine all the three of these. If the dog's doing something like somebody spills some drug on the floor and a bunch of pills, we don't want the dog to get it, I might hiss, stand up, and march at it simultaneously. That gets a really strong movement from the dog. But the goal is to do a hiss, then a stand, then a march, and then the leash, unless you need to do it more urgently. But always, always, always start with your hiss. If you start with standing up, you'll always have to stand up. Now, real quick, I'm just, as a demonstration purposes, if you can lean back a little bit, I want to make sure you have the dog in the shot. I'm going to actually have her do it. So what I want you to do is, I'm going to have you stand up really abruptly. See how he turned and kind of walked away a little bit? Mm-hmm. So it's natural for a dog to back up. They want to give themselves some escapability. Now, your standing up was fine, but I would have liked it to be seen a lot faster. I would do it, but I'm going to trigger a response here. Mm-hmm. Sit. One last little point, I haven't mentioned this before. When you reward or correct a dog, the timing is one of the most important things. I tell my clients you have a window of 3 seconds. If you're beyond the 3 seconds, it's hard for them to extrapolate what it is. So if you sit, sit. I want to do it within a third of a second if possible, 3 seconds maximum. But if you can't correct the dog within 3 seconds, it doesn't quite understand what's going on. So try to do it immediately. All right, so these are the escalating consequences I use to disagree with dogs.